The transport ship slowed down as it approached the massive station floating in space. Yang pressed his face against the window, his breath fogging the glass. The Andromeda Galactic Military Academy looked like a small moon. Towers of silver metal stretched out in every direction. Ships came and went like insects around a hive. Thousands of lights blinked across its surface. Yang swallowed hard. He was the first human to ever step foot inside that place. The ship docked with a loud clang. Yang grabbed his small bag and walked toward the exit. His hands were shaking. He had trained for 3 years on Earth to get this chance. He had beaten 2,000 other candidates. He had studied every night until his eyes hurt. And now he was here. The door opened and Yang stepped into the station. He froze. Everywhere he looked, there were aliens. Tall ones, short ones, ones with 4 arms, ones with scales, ones that floated in the air. The hallway was packed with creatures from dozens of different worlds, and every single one of them stopped to stare at him. A massive figure stepped in front of Yang. It stood 8 feet tall, covered in green scales. Yellow eyes looked down at him. The creature's mouth opened, showing rows of sharp teeth. "You are the human." The voice was deep and rough like grinding rocks. Yang stood as straight as he could. "Yes, Cadet Yang reporting for." The creature made a sound that might have been a laugh. "They actually sent one. I thought it was a joke." It turned to other scaled beings nearby. "Look, brothers, Earth finally learned to walk among the stars. Only took them long enough." The others laughed. Yang felt his face turn red, but he said nothing. He picked up his bag and walked past them. Behind him, he heard more laughter. The hallway seemed to go on forever. Other cadets moved in groups, talking in languages Yang couldn't understand. Some glanced at him and whispered. Others just stared. Nobody smiled. A floating screen appeared in front of him. Words scrolled across it in English. "Cadet Taeyang, proceed to PROCSSING Center, Sector 7, Level 4. Yang followed the arrows on the floor. They led him to a large room filled with more cadets. A tall figure stood at the front. It looked almost human, but its skin was pale blue and its eyes were completely black. "New arrivals form a line," the figure said. Its voice echoed in Yang's head even though its mouth didn't move. "I am Instructor In. You will be assigned quarters and schedules. You will receive your academy uniforms. You will attend the welcome assembly in 2 hours. Do not be late. The commandant does not tolerate weakness." Yang got in line. The cadet in front of him had 4 arms and purple skin. It glanced back at him. "What species are you?" it asked. "Human from Earth." The purple cadet's eyes widened. "Earth, I've heard of that place. You people just figured out faster than light travel, 200 years ago?" "About that, yes." "And they let you in here?" The cadet shook its head. "This academy has been training warriors for 3,000 years. Some species have been coming here for longer than your civilization has existed." Yang didn't know what to say to that. When it was his turn, a robot scanned his body and handed him a uniform. The dark blue fabric felt strange in his hands. The robot pointed to a changing room. The uniform fit perfectly. Yang looked at himself in the mirror. He looked like a real cadet now, but he still felt like a fake. He found his assigned quarters on level 12. The door slid open. Inside, another cadet was already unpacking. It had 4 arms, gray skin, and a face that reminded Yang of a lion. "Hello," Yang said. "I guess we're roommates. I'm Yang." The creature looked at him for a long moment. Then it grabbed its bag and walked to the door. "Wait," Yang said. "Where are you going?" "To request a new room," the creature said. "I will not share quarters with a primitive." The door closed. Yang stood alone in the room. He sat on his bed and put his head in his hands. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe he didn't belong here. Maybe they were right to laugh at him. 2 hours later, Yang sat in the assembly hall with 3,000 other cadets. The room was huge. The ceiling was so high he couldn't see it. Cadets of every shape and size filled the seats. Yang sat in the back corner alone. The lights dimmed. A figure walked onto the stage. Yang had never seen anything like it. The creature was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer like oil on water. It wore a uniform covered in medals and symbols. When it moved, it seemed to flow rather than walk. "I am Commandant Hor," the creature said. Its voice was quiet, but somehow everyone could hear it perfectly. "I have led this academy for 600 years. In that time, I have seen thousands of cadets come through these halls. Most of them fail. They fail because they are weak. They fail because they cannot adapt. They fail because they believe strength alone is enough to survive in this galaxy." The commandant's eyes seemed to scan the room. For a moment, Yang felt like those eyes stopped on him. "You come from 47 different worlds. You speak different languages. You have different customs. Some of you are strong. Some of you are fast. Some of you can read minds. Some of you can survive in the vacuum of space. But here, none of that matters. Here, you are all cadets. Here, you will all face the same trials." An image appeared in the air above the stage. It showed a massive obstacle course filled with fire, spikes, and bottomless pits. "In 1 week you will face the trial of proving. It has 3 parts. The first test will break your body. The second will break your mind. The third will break your spirit. Those who survive will earn the right to continue their training. Those who fail will return to their worlds in shame." The image changed. Now it showed cadets fighting in combat simulations, solving impossible puzzles, and commanding fleets of starships. "This academy has stood for 3,000 years because we accept only the best. We train only the strongest. We graduate only those who can lead the galaxy's armies against any threat." The commandant paused. "Look around you. Most of you will not be here in 1 month. That is not a threat. That is a fact." Yang felt cold. 1 week. He had 1 week to prepare for trials that were designed to break him. The commandant raised one long arm. "You are dismissed. Train hard, sleep well. You will need your strength." The cadets began to file out. Yang heard them talking excitedly about the trials. Some were confident. Some were nervous. But none of them seemed as scared as Yang felt. He walked back to his quarters. The room was still empty. His roommate hadn't come back. Yang lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, training would begin. In 1 week, the real test would start. Everyone expected him to fail. Even his own roommate wouldn't stay in the same room with him. But Yang had not come all this way to give up. He had not left Earth, traveled across the galaxy, and walked into this academy just to quit. If they thought humans were weak, he would prove them wrong. If they thought he didn't belong here, he would show them they were mistaken. He closed his eyes. Tomorrow would be hard, but Yang had faced hard things before. He just hoped he was ready for what was coming. The first week was hell. Every morning, Yang woke up at dawn. He ran to the training halls with hundreds of other cadets. The instructors didn't care that he was slower than the 8-foot scaled warriors. They didn't care that he couldn't lift as much as the 4-armed cadets. They didn't care that his bones were weaker than the stone-skinned fighters. They only cared that he was last. In combat training, Yang faced off against a cadet named. The massive warrior was twice his size and covered in natural armor. The match lasted 10 seconds. Picked Yang up with one hand and threw him across the room. Yang hit the mat hard enough to knock the wind from his lungs. "Again," the instructor said. Yang got up, threw him again and again and again. By the end of the session, Yang could barely walk. His whole body hurt. Other cadets stepped around him in the hallway like he was trash on the floor. Nobody helped him. Nobody even looked at him. In tactical simulation class, things were worse. The instructor was a species that could read thoughts and speak directly into minds. Her name was, and she made it clear that she thought humans were stupid. "The simulation is simple," said, her voice echoing in everyone's head. "You command a small fleet. You must defend a space station from enemy attackers. Begin." The other cadets closed their eyes. Yang could feel something in the air like electricity. The cadets were sharing thoughts, coordinating their fleets through telepathy. They moved their ships in perfect formation, anticipating every attack. Yang had no telepathy. He had to use the manual controls, inputting each command by hand. By the time he gave one order, the telepathic cadets had given 10. His station was destroyed in minutes. His voice filled his head. Predictable, slow, uncoordinated. This is what happens when a species relies on primitive verbal communication. The class laughed, even the cadets who weren't joined in. Yang stared at the screen showing his destroyed station. He wanted to argue. He wanted to defend himself. But what could he say? She was right. He was slower. He was weaker. He was worse than everyone else. That night, Yang sat alone in the cafeteria. The food was strange, cubes of protein that tasted like nothing, liquids that changed color when you drank them. He pushed his tray around, not hungry. A shadow fell over his table. Yang looked up to see 3 cadets standing there. Was in the middle. Human said, "Why are you still here?" "Because I was accepted to the academy," Yang said quietly. That was clearly a mistake. Lean down. You cannot fight. You cannot think fast enough for tactics. You have no special abilities. What exactly can you do? Yang met his eyes. "I can learn." Laughed, "Learn. In 1 week you will face the trial of proving. The first test is the Gauntlet of Thorns. Do you know what that is?" Yang shook his head. "It is an obstacle course designed to test physical strength, speed, and endurance. Cadets have died on that course, cadets stronger than you." Smile showed all his teeth. "You will not survive. Go home, human, save yourself the embarrassment." They walked away, still laughing. Yang sat there for a long time. Then he stood up, dumped his tray, and went to the library. If he couldn't be stronger or faster, he could at least be smarter. The library was massive. Holographic books floated in the air. Data screens covered every wall. Yang found a terminal and started searching for information about the trial of proving. He read for hours. The Gauntlet of Thorns had been used for 3,000 years. It tested raw physical ability. There was no way around it. You either had the strength to finish, or you didn't. The second test was called the Mind Maze. It was designed for telepathic species. Cadets had to navigate an impossible puzzle using only mental communication and coordination. Non-telepathic species usually failed this test. The third test was called the Protocol. Yang found almost no information about it. All he could learn was that it was a command simulation. Every cadet who took it failed. That was the point. It was designed to be impossible. Yang rubbed his tired eyes. 3 tests. He would probably fail the first one. He would definitely fail the second. And the third was designed to be unbeatable. Maybe was right. Maybe he should just go home. The day of the trial arrived. 3,000 cadets gathered at the entrance to the Gauntlet of Thorns. The obstacle course stretched out before them like a nightmare. Fire pits, spike walls, platforms that moved and shifted, gravity fields that would crush anyone too weak to resist. The course was 3 miles long. Commandant Hoare stood before them. "The gauntlet will test your body. Only the strong will survive. Only the fast will succeed. Only the determined will finish." His strange eyes scanned the crowd. "Begin." The cadets charged forward like a stampede. Their powerful legs carried them over obstacles that would kill smaller species. Climbed a spike wall using his claws, moving faster than Yang could run. The four-armed swung from platform to platform, using all their limbs to grip and pull. The stone-skinned simply walked through the fire, their bodies resistant to heat. Yang ran as fast as he could. His lungs burned. His legs ached. He jumped over a fire pit and barely made it to the other side. He climbed a wall using a rope, his hands slipping on the rough fiber. Ahead of him, cadets moved like they were born for this. Behind him, slower cadets fell and were disqualified. All around him, beings who were naturally stronger, faster, and tougher made it look easy. By the halfway point, Yang was in last place. His uniform was soaked with sweat. His hands were bleeding from the rope climbs. Every muscle in his body screamed for him to stop. But he didn't stop. He couldn't match their strength, so he watched how they moved. When it used brute force to push through a gravity field, Yang went around it. When swung across a gap, Yang found a lower path that was longer but safer. He finished the course in last place. By the time he crossed the finish line, most cadets had already left, stood nearby with his friends, shaking his head. "Dead last," said loud enough for everyone to hear, exactly as expected. Yang collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. He had finished. Barely, but he had finished. 2 days later, the second test began, the mind maze. The cadets stood in a large chamber. The walls were covered in symbols that glowed and shifted. The floor was a grid of tiles that changed color constantly. Instructor explained the rules. The maze has no physical solution. You cannot solve it by walking. You cannot solve it by thinking alone. You must coordinate with your team using telepathy. Those without telepathic abilities will find this test difficult. She looked directly at Yang when she said that. The cadets closed their eyes and began. Yang could feel the mental energy in the room. The air seemed to hum. They moved through the maze in perfect synchronization, their minds connected. Yang stood alone. He had no telepathy. He had no mental powers. He had nothing but his eyes and his brain. So he watched. He watched how the symbols changed. He watched how the tiles shifted color. He saw patterns that repeated. He saw sequences that looped. The maze wasn't random, it was following rules. Complex rules, but still rules. Yang started to move. When a blue symbol appeared on the wall, a red tile would light up 3 seconds later. When 2 symbols matched, the path would shift left. When the symbols formed a triangle, the gravity would reverse. He mapped it out in his head like a math problem. If A happens, then B follows. If B happens, C comes next. The cadets finished first, their mental coordination perfect. The other telepathic species followed, but then something unexpected happened. Yang finished. He stepped onto the final tile and the maze chimed, signaling completion. The room went quiet. Instructor stared at him with her dark eyes. "How?" she asked. For the first time her voice sounded confused. "You have no telepathic abilities." Yang was breathing hard. "I watched the patterns. I solved it like a puzzle. The maze has millions of variables. The human brain cannot process. I didn't process all of them. I just found the ones that mattered." Said nothing. Other instructors were whispering, cadets stared. Yang had placed in the middle of his class. Not first, but not last. For the first time since arriving, he smiled. The third test came 3 days later. All the cadets who had passed the first 2 trials gathered in the simulation hall. There were fewer of them now. The gauntlet had eliminated the weak. The mind maze had filtered out those who couldn't adapt. Only the best remained. Yang stood among them, still bruised from the physical test, still tired from the mental one. But he was still here. That had to count for something. Commandant Hoare walked to the center of the hall. The room fell silent. "The final test is the protocol," the commandant said. "For 3,000 years, every cadet in this academy has faced this simulation. For 3,000 years, every cadet has failed. This test is not designed to be won. It is designed to show us how you face impossible odds. It reveals your character when defeat is certain." Hoare's dark eyes swept across the cadets. "You will command a small fleet of 5 ships. Your mission is to rescue civilian transports trapped in a collapsing star system. However, an enemy fleet of 30 warships will ambush you. You cannot win. You cannot save everyone. The question is not whether you will fail. The question is how you will fail." A holographic display appeared in the air, showing the simulation scenario. A dying star, civilian ships caught in its gravity, and a massive enemy fleet waiting to strike. "Show us your honor and defeat," Hoare said. "Begin." One by one, cadets entered the simulation pods. Yang watched on the observation screens as each one took their turn. Went first. The charged straight at the enemy fleet, roaring battle cries. His ships fought with incredible courage. They destroyed 3 enemy vessels before being overwhelmed, went down fighting to the last ship. The instructors nodded in approval. Honorable, brave, exactly what a warrior should do. Coordinated her fleet with telepathic precision. Her ships moved like a single organism, using advanced tactics to hold off the enemy as long as possible. She saved 2 civilian transports before her fleet was destroyed. The instructors marked it as an excellent performance. More cadets went. All of them failed just as expected, but each failure showed something: courage, sacrifice, tactical skill, or clever use of resources. The instructors seemed satisfied. This was how the test was supposed to work. Then it was Yang's turn. He climbed into the simulation pod. The door sealed shut. Around him, holographic displays came to life. He could see his 5 small warships, the 12 civilian transports trapped near the dying star, and the 30 enemy vessels waiting in ambush. Through the observation window, every instructor and cadet in the academy watched. They expected him to fail quickly. After all, he was just human. He had barely passed the other tests. The simulation began. Yang looked at the scenario for 30 seconds. His mind raced through possibilities. Every option ended in defeat. A direct assault would be suicide. Trying to run would doom the civilians. Any conventional tactic would fail. But then Yang thought about something. He thought about the instructor's words. They said the test was designed to be impossible. They said it showed how you faced certain defeat. They never said you had to fight fair. Yang's fingers flew across the controls. His first order shocked everyone watching. He ordered his fleet to abandon the civilian ships and execute emergency jumps directly into the star's corona. In the observation hall, instructors gasped. Cadets shouted in confusion. Commandant Hoare leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "What is he doing?" growled. "He's abandoning those civilians." Inside the simulation, Yang's ships dove into the star's outer layer. The intense radiation scrambled sensors. The heat damaged the ships, but they survived. Most importantly, they vanished from the enemy's scanners. The enemy fleet moved in, confident of victory. They began surrounding the civilian transports, preparing to destroy them. But Yang had planned for this. Before abandoning the civilian ships, he had uploaded a virus to their systems. He had set their reactor cores to overload on a timer. He had turned 12 helpless transports into 12 massive bombs. In the observation hall, an instructor stood up. "He wouldn't. That's a war crime, using civilian vessels as weapons." The bombs detonated. The explosion was massive. The civilian ships, with their large fuel cores and reactor systems, created a chain reaction. The enemy fleet clustered around their targets was caught in the blast. Ships exploded. Metal tore apart. In seconds, the entire enemy force was destroyed. Only then did Yang's fleet emerge from the star's corona. His ships were damaged, their hulls scorched, but they were intact. With the enemy eliminated and the timer reset, Yang's ships rescued the civilians from the escape pods that had automatically launched before the explosion. The simulation ended. The words "Mission complete" appeared on the screen. The observation hall was absolutely silent. Yang climbed out of the simulation pod. His legs felt weak. He looked up at the observation window where hundreds of faces stared back at him. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the door burst open. An instructor, Warlord, stormed into the simulation room. His scales were flushed red with anger. "Dishonorable," roared, cowardly, using deception, abandoning those you swore to protect, turning civilian ships into weapons. This human has violated every code of warfare. Other instructors rushed in, all talking at once. Some agreed with, others looked uncertain. Yang stood in the middle of the chaos alone. He didn't save the civilians, one instructor argued. He sacrificed them and recovered survivors. That's not rescue. He used civilian vessels as weapons, another said. That violates the Galactic War conventions. He showed no honor, bellowed. No warrior spirit, no respect for combat. This human fought like a coward. Yang felt his face burn, but before he could defend himself, a voice cut through the noise like a blade. Silence! Commandant Hoare stood at the entrance. Every instructor immediately stopped talking. The commandant walked slowly to the center of the room, his eyes fixed on Yang. Cadet Yang, Hoare said quietly, did you know that using civilian vessels as weapons is forbidden under galactic law? Yes, sir, Yang said. Did you know that abandoning those you are sworn to protect is considered dishonorable? Yes, sir. Did you know that deception in combat is viewed as cowardly by most warrior species? Yes, sir. Then why did you do it? Yang took a deep breath. He knew his next words would either destroy him or save him. Because you didn't ask me to fail honorably, sir. You asked me to complete the mission. The mission was to rescue the civilians and survive. I did both. You sacrificed them. I put them in escape pods before the explosion. Every single civilian survived. I checked the simulation logs. 0 casualties. Hoare's expression didn't change. You destroyed the civilian ships. They were already doomed. The collapsing star would have torn them apart anyway. I just used them before they became useless debris. You showed no honor. You fought without courage. Yang felt something hot rise in his chest. Anger, frustration, all the mockery, all the humiliation, all the whispers that humans didn't belong here, it all came pouring out. With respect, sir, I don't have the luxury of honor. My species doesn't have scales that can stop bullets. We don't have 4 arms to wield multiple weapons. We can't read minds or survive in a vacuum. All we have is our ability to think differently and refuse to accept defeat. The room was silent. Yang kept going. Every species in this academy is naturally superior to humans in some way. You're stronger, faster, smarter, or tougher. But you asked me to solve an impossible problem. So I solved it the only way I could, by not playing by rules that guaranteed my defeat. War has rules, growled. War has rules for species that can afford them, Yang shot back. When my people were primitive, we didn't fight the biggest predators head-on. We outsmarted them. We trapped them. We used every advantage we could find. That's how we survived. That's how we became the dominant species on our planet. And that's how I won your impossible test. Commandant Hoare stared at Yang for a long moment. Then, incredibly, the ancient being smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. In 3,000 years, Hoare said slowly, only one cadet has ever actually won the protocol. The instructors stared at him. Cadets pressed against the observation window, trying to hear. This test was not designed to measure honor, Hoare continued. It was designed to identify revolutionary thinkers, those rare individuals who can see beyond conventional wisdom, who can challenge the way things have always been done. He looked at the shocked instructors. For 3,000 years, every cadet has been so trapped by their species' military traditions that none could think outside them. Every warrior fought honorably. Every tactician used standard doctrine. Every commander followed the rules. Hoare turned back to Yang. You are the first to understand that sometimes survival requires abandoning tradition. Stepped forward. Commandant, you cannot reward this behavior if we allow. I am not asking for your permission, warlord, Hoare said coldly. I am telling you my decision. Cadet Yang has passed the trial of proving. Furthermore, he will receive the Star of Proving for demonstrating exceptional strategic thinking. The observation hall erupted in chaos. The news spread through the academy like wildfire. By evening, every cadet knew what had happened. The human had won the unwinnable test. The human had received the Star of Proving. The human had shaken 3,000 years of tradition. Reactions were divided. Some species celebrated. The smaller races, those who had always been overshadowed by the warriors like the, saw hope in Yang's victory. If a human could win through cleverness instead of strength, maybe they could too. Others were outraged. The warrior species felt insulted. Their honor, their traditions, their entire way of life had been challenged by a primitive. They held meetings. They argued among themselves. Even some instructors questioned the commandant's decision. Yang sat alone in his quarters holding the Star of Proving. It was a small metal, silver with gold edges, but it felt heavy in his hand. Through the door he could hear voices in the hallway. Some sounded angry, others sounded curious. A knock on the door made him jump. Yang opened it carefully. Standing there was the four-armed who had been his assigned roommate on the first day. The same one who had requested a transfer rather than live with a human. "May I come in?" asked. Yang stepped aside, entered and stood awkwardly in the middle of the room. "I owe you an apology," said. "When I first saw you, I judged you based on what my people told me about humans. They said you were primitive, weak, not worthy of the academy." He looked down at his four hands. "I was wrong. What you did today, that took more courage than any physical test." Yang didn't know what to say. "Thank you. I came to ask if my transfer request could be cancelled, if you would allow me to be your roommate again." Before Yang could answer, another knock came at the door, then another, and another. Yang opened the door to find a line of cadets in the hallway. A small purple cadet he recognized from processing stood at the front. "We want to learn," the purple cadet said. "Will you teach us to think like you do?" More cadets pushed forward. A snake-like being, a floating crystal creature, a cadet made of living metal, all different species, all waiting. "Teach us the human way," a female cadet said. She had blue skin and silver eyes. "My people are miners, not warriors. We always fail combat tests, but if we could learn to think differently." Yang looked at all of them. Just days ago, these beings wouldn't even talk to him. Now they wanted to learn from him. "I don't know if I can teach it," Yang admitted. I look at problems differently, I guess." "Then let us watch you solve problems," said. "Let us study together. Maybe we can learn." A deep voice boomed from the back of the line. The crowd parted and walked through. The massive stopped in front of Yang. "I mocked you," said. His voice was quieter than usual. "I called you weak. I told you to go home." "I remember," Yang said carefully. "My species has been losing wars for the past 100 years. Our enemies have learned our tactics. They know we will always charge forward. They know we fight with honor. They use this against us." His clawed hand clenched into a fist. "When I saw what you did today, I realized something. Our honor is getting us killed." "I'm not saying honor is bad." "No, but you showed that sometimes survival is more important than tradition," lowered his head slightly. "Will you teach me? I want to learn this human way of thinking. I want to save my people." Yang felt overwhelmed. He looked at the crowd of cadets, all different species, all waiting for his answer. "I'll try," he finally said, "but I'm still learning too." The cadets smiled. Well, the ones who had mouths smiled. The others made sounds that Yang hoped meant the same thing. That night, Yang's quarters became a meeting place. Cadets from a dozen species crowded inside, sitting on the floor, floating in the air, or perched on furniture. Had canceled his transfer and moved his belongings back in. They talked about tactics. They discussed how different species approached problems. They shared stories about their and their militaries. "My people always use telepathy in combat," said. She had come to the meeting too, looking uncomfortable. We coordinate every move, but if our telepathy is blocked, we don't know what to do. What if you practiced without it? Yang suggested. Like, what if you had to give orders using words or hand signals? Looked shocked, but that would be so slow. Yes, but if your telepathy fails in real combat, you'd have a backup plan. The cadet sat back thinking, I never considered that. They talked for hours. When the cadets finally left, Yang collapsed on his bed, exhausted but happy, was cleaning up the room with his forearms. You started something today, said. Something bigger than you realize. Before Yang could ask what he meant, his communication panel beeped. A message appeared. Cadet Yang, report to Commandant Hoar's office immediately. Yang's heart sank. Was he in trouble after all? Had the Commandant changed his mind? He made his way through the empty corridors to the Commandant's office. The door opened before he could knock. Come in, Cadet, Hoar's voice said. The office was large and filled with strange objects from across the galaxy. Weapons, artifacts, metals, and holographic displays covered every surface. Hoar sat behind a desk made of what looked like crystallized starlight. Sit, the Commandant said. Yang sat, his hands were shaking. Hoar studied him for a moment. Then the ancient being stood and walked to a window that looked out at the stars. Do you know why we invited humanity to this academy? Hoar asked. I assumed it was because we developed faster than light travel. That was the excuse, not the reason. Hoar's reflection in the window seemed to shimmer. The galactic civilization is dying, Cadet Yang. Yang stared. What? We have been at peace for too long. Our species have become stagnant. Our militaries follow the same tactics they used 1,000 years ago. Our commanders graduate from this academy thinking exactly like their teachers, who thought exactly like their teachers before them. Hoar turned to face him. We are predictable, and our enemies have learned to exploit this. What enemies? Forces from dark space. Beyond our borders, they attack our outer colonies using tactics we have never seen. They adapt faster than we can. They have no honor, no traditions, no rules. Hoar's dark eyes seemed sad. And we are losing. Yang felt cold, but the galaxy is so advanced, how can? Advancement is not the same as evolution. We stopped evolving centuries ago. We became comfortable, safe, set in our ways. The Commandant walked back to his desk. The other species don't know this yet. They think these border attacks are random pirate raids, but I have seen the reports. I know the truth. Why are you telling me this? Because humanity is our hope. Hoar sat down. Your species is young. You have no ancient traditions holding you back. You are not the strongest or the fastest, but you are the most adaptable, the most creative, the most willing to break rules to survive. Yang remembered the Commandant's words from the assembly. You said that's why you accepted only the best. I lied. This academy doesn't just accept the best. It accepts those who can lead the galaxy. And right now, the galaxy needs leaders who can think differently. Hoar leaned forward. You shook this academy today, Cadet Yang. You proved that one being thinking differently can change everything. But shaking an academy is not enough. What do you want me to do? In 3 years, you will graduate. When you do, I need you to join a classified program called the Vanguard Initiative. We are quietly recruiting beings from across the galaxy who can think beyond traditional doctrine. We are building a new kind of military force, one that doesn't rely on honor or tradition, but on adaptation and innovation. You want me to help fight these enemies from dark space. I want you to help save our civilization, all of our civilizations, including humanity. Hoar handed him a data pad. This contains information about the Vanguard Initiative. Read it. Think about it. You have 3 years to decide. Yang took the pad. His mind was spinning. Commandant, why did you really design the protocol to be impossible? Hoar smiled that small smile again. Because sometimes, The only way to find revolutionary thinkers is to give them an impossible problem and see who refuses to accept defeat. Yang left the office in a daze. He walked back to his quarters, the data pad heavy in his hands. Was already asleep, snoring softly with all four arms spread out. Yang looked at the star of proving on his desk. Then he looked at the data pad. Then he looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, enemies were coming. Enemies who didn't fight fair. Enemies who didn't follow rules. Enemies who would destroy everything if someone didn't stop them. And somehow, a human from Earth was supposed to help save the galaxy. Yang smiled. It was insane. It was impossible. But then again, he had already done the impossible once today. 3 days after Yang won the protocol, everything changed. The news had spread beyond the academy. Galactic news networks picked up the story. Human cadet defeats impossible test, scrolled across displays on 100 worlds. Some species celebrated it as proof that new voices could contribute to galactic society. Others saw it as a dangerous deviation from proper military thinking. On Earth, Yang became a hero overnight. The first human to attend the academy. The first human to receive the Star of Proving. Messages flooded in from his family, his friends, and people he had never met. Everyone wanted to know the secret. How did a human beat aliens that had been training for war for thousands of years? But inside the academy, the real changes were quieter and more profound. Instructors began modifying their lesson plans. Combat classes now included sections on unconventional tactics. Simulation scenarios became less predictable. Teachers encouraged cadets to question established doctrine instead of just memorizing it. Warlord, the instructor who had been most outraged by Yang's methods, stood before his combat class with his arms crossed. "Today's lesson is about adaptation," he said, the words clearly difficult for him. "You will be facing opponents who do not fight with honor. They will use deception. They will exploit your traditions. You must be ready." The cadets looked confused. One raised a clawed hand. "But sir, you always taught us that honor in battle is—" "Honor is important," interrupted, "but survival is more important. A dead warrior cannot protect anyone." He glanced at where Yang sat. "Sometimes we must learn from unexpected sources." After class approached Yang. The massive warrior looked uncomfortable. "I still do not agree with all your methods," said, "but I cannot deny their effectiveness. Perhaps there is room in warfare for both honor and cleverness." "I think the best warriors use both," Yang said. "Honor to guide them, cleverness to keep them alive." Nodded slowly. "Perhaps you are right, human." In the following weeks, Yang's informal study group grew larger. What started as a few curious cadets became dozens. They met in various locations around the academy, discussing tactics, sharing perspectives, and challenging each other to think differently. The who had once mocked Yang became one of his closest students. The big warrior had a surprising talent for creative thinking once he let go of rigid traditions. "My ancestors would be ashamed of me," admitted one evening. "Learning from a human, questioning the warrior codes." "Or maybe they'd be proud that you're trying to save your people," Yang suggested. "Maybe," flexed his claws. "I used to think strength was everything. Now I see that strength without intelligence is just hitting things really hard." The instructor also changed. She began teaching verbal communication to telepathic cadets, preparing them for situations where their mental powers might fail. It was a revolutionary change in culture. "You were right," she told Yang after one class. "We relied too heavily on telepathy. When it fails, we are vulnerable. I will not let my students have that weakness." But not everyone was happy with the changes. A group of conservative instructors, led by several and elders, petitioned to have Yang expelled. They argued that his methods were corrupting proper military education. They claimed that honor and tradition were being abandoned. Commandant Hoare the petition in a public statement that shocked the Academy. For 3,000 years, this institution has trained warriors the same way. We have produced countless graduates who were strong, brave, and honorable. Yet for the past 100 years, our galaxy has been slowly losing ground to enemies who do not respect our traditions. Perhaps it is time we asked ourselves, are we training the warriors we wish we had, or the warriors we actually need? The statement caused heated debates across campus, but it also gave permission to those instructors who wanted to innovate. Change began to flow through the academy like water finding new paths. One morning, Yang was called to the communications center. A priority message had arrived from Earth. When he opened it, he saw an unexpected face. Yang, the young woman on the screen, smiled. "It's Hana, remember me, we trained together back on Earth." Yang remembered. Hana had been one of the other candidates competing for academy admission. She was brilliant, skilled, and had scored just below him in the final tests. "Hana, good to see you. What's—" "I'm here," she said, her smile growing wider. "At the academy. I arrived this morning. They accepted me as part of the next class of cadets. I wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "For proving we belong here. When I heard what you did, it gave me hope. You showed them that humans aren't weak. We're just different, and different can be strong." Yang felt a lump in his throat. "I'm glad you're here. Do you need any help getting settled?" "Actually, yes. I heard you run study groups. Can I join?" "Of course." Hana became part of the growing community of cadets who met to discuss tactics and strategy. She brought her own perspective, different from Yang's. Where he relied on pattern recognition and deduction, she excelled at long-term planning and resource management. Together, they made a good team. Other human cadets began arriving too. The academy had decided to accept more humans, recognizing the value of diverse thinking. Each one brought unique skills and perspectives. 6 months after the trial of proving, Commandant Hoare gathered all the cadets in the assembly hall. The massive room was packed. Every seat was filled. "I have an announcement," Hoare said. "This year, the Academy has seen more tactical innovation than in the previous century. Combat scores are up across all species. Simulation success rates have improved by 40%. Cadets are thinking more creatively and adapting faster." He paused, his dark eyes scanning the crowd. This change began with one cadet who refused to accept defeat, who showed us that questioning tradition is not weakness, it is evolution, who proved that the voices can sometimes see what the oldest eyes cannot. Yang felt everyone's eyes on him. He tried to sink lower in his seat, but pushed him back up with one of his 4 arms. "But this change continued because all of you chose to learn. You chose to adapt. You chose to become better warriors by embracing new ideas while keeping the wisdom of the old." Hoare's voice grew stronger. "You are the future of galactic defense, and you are proving that our civilization can still evolve." The cadets erupted in cheers. Species that had barely tolerated each other 6 months ago now sat together, studied together, and trained together. That night, Yang stood at the Academy's main observation deck. The massive window looked out at the galaxy, billions of stars, thousands of worlds, hundreds of civilizations. Somewhere out there, enemies were testing the borders, forces that didn't follow rules, threats that would require new thinking to defeat. Footsteps approached. Yang turned to see Commandant Hoare. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Hoare said, looking at the stars. "Yes, sir. All those worlds, all those species, all depending on beings like you to protect them." Hoare's reflection in the window seemed ancient and tired. "Have you thought about the Vanguard Initiative?" "Every day, sir." "And—" "I'm scared," Yang admitted. "I'm scared I'm not ready. I'm scared I'll fail. I'm scared that I only got lucky once and everyone is expecting too much from me." Hoare nodded. "Good, fear keeps us sharp, overconfidence kills." "But I'll do it," Yang continued. I'll join the vanguard not because I think I'm special, but because if I don't, who will? Someone has to stand up, someone has to try. That is the answer I hoped for. Hor placed a long hand on Yang's shoulder. You asked me once why we designed the protocol to be impossible. I told you it was to find revolutionary thinkers, but there was another reason. What reason? To find beings who would fight even when victory seemed impossible, who would try even when everyone said they would fail, who would stand up even when they were afraid. Hor's grip tightened slightly. Those are the beings who change history, Cadet Yang. More footsteps echoed behind them. Yang turned to see dozens of cadets approaching, Hana and many others. We thought you might be here, said. We wanted to thank you, added, for teaching us. I didn't teach you anything, Yang protested. You all learned on your own. You taught us to question, said with all four arms crossed, to think differently, to challenge what we thought we knew. Hana stepped forward. You proved that being different isn't a weakness. It's an advantage. Every species here has something unique to offer. You just reminded us to use it. The cadets gathered around the observation window, all looking out at the stars together. Different species, different traditions, but united by a common purpose. You know, said thoughtfully, my people have a saying. The strongest wall is made of many different stones. I never understood it until now. My people say something similar, said. Many minds think better than one, even if that one is very powerful. Other cadets shared their own species' wisdom. All of them, in different words, said the same thing. Diversity makes us stronger. Yang looked at his friends, because that's what they were now, friends, and felt something warm in his chest. He had come to this academy alone, scared and doubting himself. He had been mocked and dismissed. But he hadn't given up, and by not giving up, he had inspired others, and those others had inspired even more. And now, something was growing that was bigger than any one being. 3 years, Yang said quietly. We have 3 years until graduation. Then we make them count, Hana said. We learn everything we can. We train as hard as we can. We prepare. For what? Someone asked. Yang looked out at the stars. Out there, somewhere in the dark, enemies were coming. Enemies that would challenge everything the galaxy knew about warfare. But the galaxy was changing, it was adapting, it was evolving. And it was ready. For whatever comes, Yang said, together. The cadets stood together at the window watching the stars. Different species, different abilities, different perspectives. But one purpose. The day Yang won, the protocol had shaken the academy. But the ripples of that day spread far beyond academy walls. They spread through the galaxy, touching species that had been set in their ways for. Change had begun. Evolution had started. The old ways were being challenged, tested, and improved. And when the enemies from dark space finally came, they would find something they didn't expect. A galaxy that had learned to think differently. A civilization that had remembered how to evolve. And at the heart of it all, a human cadet who had refused to accept defeat. The stars watched, the galaxy waited, and Yang smiled. The real test was still to come, but for the first time since arriving at the academy, he wasn't afraid. He was ready.